The cake knife was warm in my hand, its handle polished from decades of use. I had used it to cut birthday cakes, wedding tears, even that pumpkin pie Desmond used to love before Rhea decided desserts were emotionally manipulative. 65 years old. And there I was again serving, at the far end of a long polished table that I had refinished myself 2 springs ago. Crystal glistened in the candlelight. Rhea had insisted on low lighting softer for the photos. The whole room smelled like roasted shallots wine too sweet for the entree, and tension no one dared name. Desmond sat at the head exactly where his father used to, back straight cufflinks catching the light. My son the boy I had once rocked through fever and fear, now dressed like he'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine, and smiled like he'd never known what it cost to get here. Ivy, my granddaughter, sat to my right. She kept fidgeting with her napkin. She didn't say much. Her eyes kept flicking to me, then her father, as if trying to decode something the adults wouldn't explain. When the dessert tray arrived, a hush settled over the table. I knew that kind of silence. Not gratitude, anticipation. I reached for the cake, lifting it gently. Triple-layer chocolate with coffee ganache, not too sweet, just the way Desmond liked it. Still liked it. Even if he didn't remember why. He cleared his throat, set down his fork, and then before I could even finish slicing, he stood, wine in hand, eyes glossy but not from drink, voice perfectly composed. I'd like to say something. Everyone turned. Forks paused midair. Rhea angled her shoulders slightly toward him, a stage cue. Desmond's gaze didn't waver from mine. Mom. That word, once tender, once sacred, now felt like a formal address. I want to thank you for everything you've done, for raising me, supporting me, and being part of my life. Until now. I blinked once. The candles behind him flickered. Desmond's voice lowered, but it reached every ear. I don't think it's healthy to keep pretending we're close. From today on, you're no longer part of this family's future. Ivy gasped. A fork clattered. Even Rhea flinched just for a second. I didn't move, not right away. The sting in my chest wasn't pain, it was clarity. I reached into the inner lining of my coat, pulled out a cream-colored envelope sealed and weighty, walked to the center of the table, set it down beside his wine glass. Then slowly, I smiled. If you're going to erase me, make sure you read what you're deleting. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry, because tears are for grief, and this wasn't a funeral. This was a transfer of power, and for once he didn't know the script. Where in the world are you listening from? Have you ever been cut off right in the place you helped build? Drop your city in the comments. And subscribe, because some goodbyes don't end in silence, they begin with it. The cake knife was warm in my hand, its handle polished from decades of use. I had used it to cut birthday cakes, wedding tears, even that pumpkin pie Desmond used to love, before Rhea decided desserts were emotionally manipulative. 65 years old. And there I was again serving, at the far end of a long polished table that I had refinished myself 2 springs ago. Crystal glistened in the candlelight. Rhea had insisted on low lighting softer for the photos. The whole room smelled like roasted shallots wine too sweet for the entree, and tension no one dared name. Desmond sat at the head exactly where his father used to, back straight cufflinks catching the light. My son the boy I had once rocked through fever and fear, now dressed like he'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine, and smiled like he'd never known what it cost to get here. Ivy, my granddaughter, sat to my right. She kept fidgeting with her napkin. She didn't say much. Her eyes kept flicking to me, then her father, as if trying to decode something the adults wouldn't explain. When the dessert tray arrived, a hush settled over the table. I knew that kind of silence. Not gratitude, anticipation. I reached for the cake, lifting it gently. Triple-layer chocolate with coffee ganache, not too sweet, just the way Desmond liked it. Still liked it. Even if he didn't remember why. He cleared his throat, set down his fork, and then before I could even finish slicing, he stood, wine in hand, eyes glossy but not from drink, voice perfectly composed. I'd like to say something. Everyone turned. Forks paused midair. Rhea angled her shoulders slightly toward him, a stage cue. Desmond's gaze didn't waver from mine. Mom, that word, once tender, once sacred, now felt like a formal address. I want to thank you for everything you've done, for raising me, supporting me, and being part of my life. Until now. I blinked once. The candles behind him flickered. Desmond's voice lowered, but it reached every ear. I don't think it's healthy to keep pretending we're close. From today on, you're no longer part of this family's future. Ivy gasped. A fork clattered. Even Rhea flinched just for a second. I didn't move. Not right away. The sting in my chest wasn't pain, it was clarity. I reached into the inner lining of my coat, pulled out a cream-colored envelope sealed and weighty, walked to the center of the table, set it down beside his wine glass. Then slowly, I smiled. If you're going to erase me, make sure you read what you're deleting. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry, because tears are for grief, and this wasn't a funeral. This was a transfer of power. And for once, he didn't know the script. Where in the world are you listening from? Have you ever been cut off right in the place you helped build? Drop your city in the comments. And subscribe, because some goodbyes don't end in silence, they begin with it. I wasn't always the woman who set traps in silence. Once I believed in words, I built my life on them. Psychologist, private practice, 50 hours a week, listening to other people's wounds while keeping my own stitched tight. I married Edward when I was 28. He was charming in a way that knew it. Ambitious, sharp, too polished around the edges to ever feel fully safe. But I was trained to see the best in people, or at least to help them find it. We had Desmond 2 years later, and in the glow of that tiny hospital room, he held my finger like it was the whole world. And I believed naively maybe that love was enough. It wasn't. Edward died young. Heart attack. 48. No warning. No apology for the years I spent being invisible beside him. Desmond was 15. Too tall for hugs, too angry for grief, and too proud to cry in front of me. But we got through. Together, I downsized the practice, took on fewer clients, saved every penny for his tuition, and when he got into Columbia, I framed the acceptance letter, hung it next to my degree. He never noticed. Still, I never asked him to. That's the trap of motherhood, isn't it? You give everything and ask for nothing until they forget you ever gave at all. Rhea came into the picture years later, marketing executive, whip smart, eyes like ice water. Desmond met her at a corporate summit. She liked data metrics, measurable things. She liked control. And she didn't like me, not overtly. She was polite, too polite, the kind of civility that slices you under the surface. At first I tried. I brought her rosemary from the garden, family recipes, a photo album of Desmond when he was small. She smiled through all of it, then never brought it up again. Slowly, Desmond started canceling dinners. Work's crazy. Rhea already has plans. Ivy has ballet? Ivy. She was the thread that kept me tied to them. Her visits became less frequent, but when she came, she ran into my arms like nothing had changed. Until she didn't. Until her drawings stopped including me. Until she started saying things like, "Mom says your memory is getting fuzzy," or "Dad says you need rest more than guests." That's how it happens. Not with a scream, but with a fading. You fade from the photos, from the invites, from their version of the future. And one day you wake up and realize the house you cleaned, the child you raised, the dinners you hosted, the legacy you preserved has been reassigned. That's why I started writing everything down. That's why I recorded conversations. Not because I was paranoid, but because I knew the playbook. I'd seen clients whose families gaslit them into nursing homes while smiling through family portraits. I wasn't going to be one of them. I didn't want revenge. Not then. I wanted recognition, but when they couldn't give it, I built something better. Proof, control, escape routes. And now, sitting at this table with the cake untouched and the envelope between us, I realized something else. Maybe motherhood isn't about being remembered with love. Maybe it's about making damn sure you're never forgotten in shame. The first real sign came in the form of a polite envelope, cream-colored, embossed in silver. It arrived by certified mail, tucked among grocery coupons and a charity newsletter. I thought it was a holiday card from an old colleague. It wasn't. Inside, a notice of property reassignment. Parcel 3C, Lakeside, the Ashendale House. I stared at the words, but they didn't change. Owner of Record Wynter Strategic Holdings, LLC. Not Clarissa Wynter. Not co-owned. Just transferred. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper. I knew what real legal language looked like. This was real. I checked the signature on the transfer. Neat, impressive. Not mine. My name sat at the bottom like a stamp on someone else's plan. Signed, updated, notarized, and absolutely forged. I didn't call Desmond. Not yet. I drove down to the Ashendale County Clerk's office, a small brick building with green shutters and dusty fake plants in the lobby. I'd been there only once when Edward and I bought the lake house. We'd picked it together. He said it was too small. I said it was perfect for holidays and peace. He bought it with money from my inheritance. And I paid the first 3 years of property tax after his stroke. The woman at the front desk, Nora, wore large glasses and recognized me from a grief support group I used to run. Clarissa, haven't seen you since your series on trauma response. I gave her a smile that didn't reach my cheeks. Nora, I need a copy of any recent transfers on Parcel 3C. She didn't ask why, just printed them out. When she handed me the file, her brow creased. Odd. The signature, I shook my head. It's not mine. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't press. I stepped out into the cold papers tucked under my coat. I didn't drive home, not yet. I pulled into a quiet parking lot beside the church Desmond was baptized in, turned off the engine, and read everything again. They'd filed the documents 3 weeks ago. 3. Right around the time Rhea had asked me casually whether I planned to keep the lake house as it ages. I remember thinking it was an odd phrase. As it ages, not if I kept it, but whether. And Desmond, he hadn't mentioned anything. I opened my journal, logged the date, time, content of the form, took photos, scanned the signature next to my real one from a notarized letter I had sent Ivy's school last spring. Then I drove home, parked, and walked straight to the back of the study. Behind the wall of law textbooks and framed certifications was a hidden safe. Edward never knew about it. Desmond probably forgot it existed. Inside, a tape recorder, 3 backup USBs, my original will, and a folder labeled Contingency A, Misuse of Trust. I laid everything on the table. My pulse didn't race. No panic. Just a new kind of clarity, the kind that comes when the grief dies. And the war begins. Still, I gave Desmond one chance. I called him, speakerphone, recorder on. Hey, Mom, he answered quickly. Everything okay? I received something today. A property transfer form for the Ashendale house. Silence. Then, oh, yeah. That's just for liability shielding, all above board. You're still safe. Who signed my name? Another pause. Legal took care of it. You must have signed something at brunch that day. Remember brunch? Egg whites and green juice. Rhea pushing the papers under my elbow, laughing at my stories, while distracting me from the signature block. I hadn't signed. Not that. Not ever. I didn't authorize that transfer, I said. Mom. His voice dropped into that faux concerned tone. You might not remember, that was all I needed. I ended the call, saved the recording, and wrote 3 words on the first page of my red journal. They think I'm gone. Ivy arrived on a Wednesday, unannounced, hair windblown cheeks, pink from the cold. I made something, she said, lifting a rolled-up sketch pad. Can I show you inside? Of course she could. She settled near the fireplace, knees curled under her sketch pad, resting on her thighs like it held a secret. She flipped it open, a watercolor of our lake. Muted gray sky, thin trees stripped for winter. A single chair facing the water. It's beautiful, I said. I call it Still Here. My breath caught. She didn't mean the chair. She meant me. We painted. We drank cocoa. We sat in silence. Then, as she leaned forward to sharpen her pencil, she asked casually, like she was asking what we'd eat for lunch. Grandma, do you remember talking to yourself last week? I looked at her. Why, Mom said you were doing that again. She blinked. She said that's why you record everything, so you don't forget stuff anymore. I placed my mug down slowly. And what else did Mom say? That sometimes you confuse dreams with real life, and that you wrote a letter to a man who's been dead for years. She hesitated. Did you really do that? I smiled. A tight one. Yes. It was your grandfather, and no, it wasn't confusion, it was closure. She didn't say more. She just looked down, soft and quiet, like she didn't know what team she was supposed to be on. After she left, I went into my study. Something felt off. The air, the smell, the drawers weren't open, but the rug was half curled at the corner. I opened the cabinet where I kept the backup camera unit. Gone. I checked the flash drive slot behind the bookshelf. Empty. Someone had been here. They knew where to look, what to erase, and exactly how much would be considered nothing unusual. They weren't trying to destroy evidence yet. They were trying to build a case of confusion, of forgetfulness, of instability. Thursday morning, I got a knock. Mr. Langley, my neighbor, retired, kind, and as uncomfortable as I'd ever seen him. Clarissa. Sorry to ask, but have you been all right lately? I raised an eyebrow. Define all right. He shifted. Someone stopped me in front of the pharmacy, said they were conducting a wellness survey for elder care, asked if you'd shown signs of memory loss or erratic behavior, said it was confidential but official. I nodded, thanked him. Then I went inside and shut the door. I stood still for a long time, long enough for the kettle to boil dry. They were moving faster now. The property was just the first step. Now they wanted the narrative. I pulled out my calendar, flipped back, marked every suspicious moment, every excuse, every odd phrasing Rhea had used: legacy, management, medical preparedness, low cognitive thresholds. I pulled out an old psychology textbook, one I'd written a chapter for. Page 278, Signs of Coercive Family Guardianship Patterns. I knew the checklist. They were using it on me, but they forgot something. I wasn't a client. I was the damn author. So I set new cameras, silent ones, different angles, off-network, battery-backed, motion-triggered. Then I recorded a new file. Date, time, names, incidents. I printed it, signed it, stamped it, slipped it into a fireproof envelope labeled "Open if I'm ever not Clarissa." And I whispered to the night, "They don't want me gone. They want me rewritten." Well then, they'd better learn how painful it is to read between the lines. They invited me to brunch. That alone was suspicious. Desmond hated brunch, said it was an inefficient meal, but now he was suddenly all eggs Benedict and fresh squeezed orange juice. Rhea opened the door in muted beige, always beige, like she didn't want to distract anyone from how important she thought she was. "Clarissa," she smiled. "Come in, you look radiant." I did not. I looked tired, on purpose. Let them believe I was slipping a little too quiet, a little too slow. They expected soft walls. They didn't realize I'd soundproofed them with steel. The table was set perfectly, linen napkins, no salt. Rhea said it was distracting to the palate. No Ivy either. "Where's Ivy?" I asked. Desmond gestured vaguely. "Art camp." It was Wednesday. There was no art camp. We sat, chatted. Rhea complimented my scarf. Desmond asked if I was still journaling for clarity. I smiled and nodded. Then they placed the folder on the table, soft leather, one gold clip. "We thought it might be time to talk about next steps," Rhea said, her voice so gentle it barely touched the air. "What kind of steps?" I asked. "Contingency planning," Desmond added quickly. "Just simple paperwork. Power of attorney, healthcare directives, nothing urgent. But it's better to be prepared." I opened the folder, flipped, read, Clause 4.2, Transfer of financial decision-making in the event of cognitive decline. Clause 6.1, Authorization for emergency relocation and care management if deemed necessary. Deemed by who them? Of course. I closed the folder. "Looks very thorough." Desmond smiled. "We wanted to make sure everything's clear, for everyone's sake." Rhea reached across the table with a fountain pen. "No pressure. But if you feel ready, signing now would just take a moment." I picked up the pen, held it, let it hover, then set it down. "Let me think about it." They didn't argue. Too smart for that. But the gleam in Rhea's eye, the one that flickered for half a second, told me exactly how much she hated hearing no. I left soon after. They sent me off with a small box of rosemary scones. No note, no warmth, just silence neatly tied with ribbon. That night, as I made tea and watched the sky melt into ash, my laptop pinged. One new email, no subject. Sender unknown, sender93@protonmail.com. I opened it. One paragraph. "Check your birthday guest list. Ask why half the invites don't say your name. They're calling it a celebration. It's not. It's a transition. You're just the last one to find out." I scrolled down, no signature, no attachments. Just one final line, "Don't eat the cake." I stared at the screen, then leaned back into my chair and laughed quiet, sharp. They thought they were writing the ending. But I hadn't even started the prologue. I hadn't seen Harper Lou in over 2 years. But when I texted her, "Need something airtight. Quiet. Now," she replied within 3 minutes. "Come in first thing, no questions." Her office hadn't changed. Top floor above the bank, real mahogany, no fake smiles. She opened the door before I could knock. "Clarissa," no hug, just a firm nod. the kind women give each other when one of them is stepping into a war. We sat. I laid everything out: the forged deed, the brunch file, the email, and Ivy's offhanded warnings. Harper didn't speak for a full 5 minutes. Just read, then said, "They're grooming a narrative. They want power of attorney, and they're almost there. I want to trust," I said, stronger than before. "Irrevocable, private, and deadly." She raised an eyebrow. "Deadly to any chance they have of touching a cent after I'm gone." I leaned forward. "The lake house, my retirement account. This home, all of it, I want it shielded. Conditions, yes. Anyone who has the initiated or supported medical guardianship claims B. Forged, manipulated, or co-signed legal transfers on my behalf, or C. Attempted to isolate me under claims of mental instability is automatically disqualified from the trust." Harper whistled. "That's going to need ironclad language. I want it written like scripture." She stood, walked to the filing cabinet, pulled out a red folder marked Preemptive Trust Shielding 4C and a thin black case labeled Testimony Kit Emergency Protocol. "Do you have medical records?" "Yes." "Psych eval from last year?" "Clean. Cognitive scores above 90th percentile." "Perfect. We'll timestamp it." "What about recording?" I asked. "My face, my voice, while I sign, of course." "We'll do a live timestamped video, legal notary, and 3 encrypted copies." She pulled out the camera, lit the room like it was a deposition. Ready, I looked into the lens. "My name is Dr. Clarissa Wynter. I am of sound mind and body. This document reflects my deliberate intent." I signed. Slow, bold strokes, no hesitation. Harper added, "Witnessed and recorded under no duress in a closed legal setting." She clicked the recorder off, then looked at me. "So, what's next?" I slid her an envelope. Inside, contact info for Ivy's art mentor, the local museum director, and a pediatric therapist who used to work with trauma-affected children. "Ivy gets the trust," I said, "when she turns 25. If she never participated in what they tried to do to me." Harper smiled, not soft, but real. "God, you're good. I wasn't always. But I've been underestimated long enough to get there." We shook hands. Before I left, I looked back once. The red folder, the video file, the signed page, all safely sealed. In the lobby, I passed a mother and her son. He couldn't have been older than 7. He reached up to hold her hand. And I thought, there it is, the moment it all begins. Before they forget, you're not theirs to erase. The elevator doors closed, with the kind of hush I'd come to trust more than words. The night of my 65th birthday came dressed in gold and glass. Rhea had rented a private room at the Willowshade Inn, the most expensive venue in Ashendale Vale. Everything glowed: candles, chandeliers, even the wine. The place smelled like old money and powdered citrus, the kind of scent people mistake for elegance, but I've always known it hides something dying underneath. Desmond wore a midnight blue suit, Rhea ivory silk, Ivy a pale gray dress that matched her silence. She sat next to me, her fingers in constant motion, folding napkins, twisting the hem of her sleeve, anything to keep from watching her father. The appetizers came and went. A violinist played something forgettable. Then as the cake arrived, as I lifted the knife, Desmond stood. He raised his glass. I lowered my hand. "Thank you all for coming," he began, "to celebrate the incredible woman who brought me into this world." Everyone clapped lightly. I didn't smile. He wasn't done. But sometimes loving someone also means knowing when it's time to move forward. Forks paused midair. Ivy stopped breathing. Desmond continued, his voice, smooth practice like a eulogy. "As of today, I've decided to restructure our family affairs financially and emotionally. And while I'll always be grateful to the woman who raised me," his eyes locked on mine, "I no longer believe she belongs in what comes next." The room chilled. Even Rhea's smile flickered. Ivy dropped her spoon. Aunt Mari set down her glass, shaky. I stood. No one asked me to, but they all turned. I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer, pulled out an envelope, cream wax sealed. No words on the outside. I walked down the table, set it beside Desmond's wine glass, then looked at him. Calm, steady, unmoved. "I carried you for 38 weeks. I carried your shame even longer." He blinked, maybe expecting tears. There were none. "If you're going to erase me," I said, "make sure you read what you're deleting." I turned to leave, stopped beside Ivy, touched her shoulder. She didn't look up, but her hand found mine under the table, held it once, let go. and I walked out, not as a mother, not as a guest, but as the storm they never saw coming. The moment I stepped out of the Willowshade Inn, I stopped pretending. No more measured smiles, no more giving them time to fix it. They'd buried me not with a shovel, but with champagne. But I had come with resurrection stitched into my coat pocket. I didn't go home. I went to Harper's office. She was waiting, coat on files ready. She took one look at me and said, "He said it, didn't he?" I nodded. "Let's begin." We sat under fluorescent lights while the rest of Ashendale toasted the death of my place at their table. Harper opened the document folder. The trust transfer now final, now irrevocable. Signed, stamped, indexed. Every asset, the lake house, the main property, my retirement fund. The account Desmond didn't know existed had been moved into the Clarissa Wynter Foundation. And the conditions crystal. Clause 7A. Any individual found to have orchestrated, endorsed, or benefited from attempts to remove Clarissa Wynter from decision-making through claims of cognitive decline forfeits all inheritance. Clause 9. Any use of emotional coercion, legal manipulation, or forged documentation shall be grounds for immediate removal from any executor or beneficiary rights. Clause 12. In the event of Clarissa Wynter's sudden death or medical incapacitation, a full audit will be triggered, backed by medical records, voice logs, video records, and third-party witness accounts. Harper had seen to every word, like she'd been waiting for this her whole career. "Are you ready for the delivery?" she asked. Yes. We pressed send. One copy to the ethics committee at Ria's PR firm, one to the board of Desmond's company, one to the 3 trustees holding Ivy's future trust, and one to a private Dropbox folder shared only with Ivy's school counselor, just in case. But that wasn't all. I opened my leather case, pulled out a flash drive, inserted it into Harper's laptop. The screen came to life, a video file, kitchen, November 3rd, 10:14 p.m. In it, Ria's voice. "Well, if she doesn't sign, we'll just say she's paranoid. It won't take much, she already records things. The judge will think she's unstable." Desmond's voice. "I don't want to hurt her." Ria. "Then don't. Let me handle it." Harper paused the video. "Jesus Christ," I nodded. "Let that play in court, in media, in shareholder meetings, wherever it needs to land." She transferred the file into a folder marked failsafe, then duplicated it to 2 encrypted drives. We signed one last document, a notarized statement that I was fully alert in my own voice, narrating the events of the last 18 months. The camera captured my swollen dignity, not bruises. Just the clean lines of someone who'd stopped playing polite. When we finished, Harper looked at me. "Do you want to go home now?" I shook my head. "I want to pick someone up. Ivy." She met me outside her school gates, small backpack, darker eyes. "I heard what happened," she whispered. "They said you just left." I did. "Was it bad?" "No," I said. "It was necessary." We drove back to the lake house. I'd already had it aired out. Stocked, warm blankets, firewood, a new easel for her with paper as tall as she was. That night, while she painted in silence, I scrolled through my messages. Desmond had called 11 times. No voicemail. He knew better. Ria had sent one text. "You've made your point. This is cruel." I stared at the screen. Cruel. As if slow erasure wasn't. As if forced compliance wasn't. As if smiling while handing me a pen I didn't ask for wasn't cruelty wearing perfume. I replied, "You mistook quiet for weak. That's on you." Then I blocked her. 3 days later, Harper emailed subject movement. Desmond's company froze his accounts. Internal investigation launched. Ria's firm suspended her without pay. Her name removed from the digital masthead within hours. By the end of the week, the house Desmond had prepared for himself and Ivy was legally locked under the Wynter Foundation. He couldn't touch it, couldn't sell it, couldn't even explain it to the board. The trust had been published. The media had picked up whispers. A wealthy widow outmaneuvering her social climbing heirs. They didn't have all the details, but the image stuck. A woman left behind, who didn't stay behind. Back at the lake, Ivy sat with her sketch pad, drew a tree in winter, no leaves, but strong, rooted. "Can I call this one Clarissa?" she asked. I smiled. "You can call it whatever you want, darling. It's yours now." That night we lit the fireplace. I handed her a small notebook. "Write what matters," I said, "so they can never make you forget it." And for the first time in months, I slept without locking my door. It rained hard the day Desmond came. Hard enough to turn the gravel path into mud, hard enough to blur the lake into the sky. He didn't call first. Didn't text. Didn't send Rhea. He showed up alone, hood down. Hair-soaked, hands empty. Ivy was upstairs, headphones on, painting a bird with broken wings. I stood at the door. Didn't open it. Just looked at him through the glass. He knocked once, then again. Not loud, just enough. I stepped outside. Didn't offer shelter. Let the rain hit both of us. He deserved to be cold for a minute. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked like the thunder behind him. I didn't answer, not yet. I know what I said at the party. I know what I signed. I thought it was just business. He swallowed. Rain traced the edge of his jaw like a confession. "Rhea told me you were slipping, that it was time to transition power, that we'd take care of you." I crossed my arms. "You forged my name, tried to silence me, stood over a dinner I paid for and declared me gone." He wiped water from his eyes. Or maybe it was something else. I was wrong. "You weren't wrong," I said. "You were convenient." He looked away, then back. "Is there anything I can do? Anything I can say?" I thought of 1,000 things, but most of all, I thought of Ivy. The way she touched her pencil like a violin bow. The way she whispered, "You're still here." And I realized some things once broken should never be remade. I stepped forward. Just one step, close enough for him to see it in my eyes. "Contritoy, cum connua." He flinched, physically, like my words were stone. Then he nodded and walked away. No begging, no tantrum, just silence, the exact kind he once used to erase me. 2 days later, a letter arrived from Rhea, handwritten, elegant cursive, a full-page apology with no real weight. I read the first line, burned the rest in the fireplace. By the end of the month, Rhea's publicist released a vague statement stepping away to focus on family and health. Her clients didn't wait. Within 2 weeks, she was off every website. A ghost with good lighting. Desmond's company issued a restructuring notice. He resigned to pursue personal matters. No fanfare, just the sound of doors closing. At the lake house, Ivy stayed. I enrolled her in a private art program nearby. We turned the guest room into her studio. She still asked about her father, but not often, and never with tears. One night she showed me a painting, a woman on fire, but the flames curled like wings. "Who is she?" I asked. "I think she's you," Ivy said, "or maybe me, or maybe both." We didn't talk after that. We just watched the fire crackle, not destroy, just warm, because sometimes you don't need to burn it all down, you just need to stop giving them wood. And as the snow began to fall outside, I looked at my granddaughter, her fingers stained with charcoal and red paint, and whispered, This is what legacy should look like." 6 months later, the lake stopped freezing. Spring crept in like a gentle apology. Nothing grand. Just the sound of melting ice and the way Ivy hummed while brushing color across canvas. Our routine was simple. She painted, I read. We spoke when it mattered. And that was enough. No one from Desmond's side reached out again. Not even a holiday card. Rhea's Instagram account vanished. Her name no longer headlined anything. She had become what she once feared most: forgettable. I didn't need revenge. Not anymore. I had Ivy. One Sunday, while dusting the bookshelf, I found a letter Edward had written years before his death. It was tucked inside a first edition I hadn't opened in a decade. The envelope yellowed at the edges. Addressed simply, "If I'm gone before you." I sat by the window while Ivy sketched wildflowers on the porch. Opened it with steady hands. His handwriting, firm, slanted, familiar, filled one page. He spoke of regrets. Of missing Clarissa, not the doctor. Of watching me become both mother and protector, and knowing he hadn't made it easy. But it was the last line that stayed with me. "Whatever you choose to pass on, Clarissa, make sure it's something worth holding." I folded the letter carefully, slid it between 2 pages of Ivy's sketchbook. When she wasn't looking, she'd find it one day and understand. Legacy isn't about wealth. It's not about names carved into deeds or portraits on mantles. It's the stories we refuse to let be rewritten, the truth we guard until someone younger learns how to carry it. That night, I watched Ivy hang her newest painting above the fireplace. It showed a woman, older, upright, silver hair, flying, standing in a storm, with a candle that didn't flicker. She turned to me. "Is it too much?" I smiled. "It's just enough. Then I looked into the fire, warm, steady, unafraid, and finally felt home. Was it justice, or just the kind of silence you only earn by surviving? Drop your thoughts below, and if you've ever been erased, may you write yourself back louder than ever.